Yggdrasil back. I have another card back Vanguard deck profile. So hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. So let's get started. Today's deck is Genesis, the upgraded Artemis Yggdrasil, Yggdrasil, whatever it's called, deck profile. So this is not the weird Fenrir thing that I've heard people talk about. I have no idea what it actually is. If you want to tell me, you can, but I'm not gonna put it on this channel. I can guarantee you that. And if you want to know the explanation, go to like the last 5 minutes of my last deck profile and you'll get your explanation. But anyways, and it's not the Valkyrion thing. I've heard some people talk about a Valkyrion thing with that. I'm not so sure if it's an actual thing though. But this is just Divine Gauge on its own, its simplest form. So, let's get this started. I hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. Let's go! So first up, the starter, Aiming for the Stars, Artemis. So the standard when wrote upon draw a card, and then I forgot to put this, but it also gets a quick shot if your Vanguard is grade 1 or greater. So, you know, standard helper card and getting the 5k shield. 5k shield can be helpful later on, but mainly it's used for discarding. But it's still helpful, it's just a 5k shield. Honestly, it could be used for better things. Okay, on to triggers. 4 copies of Goddess of Self-Sacrifice, Kusinada. This is a draw trigger, it's the Sentinel, you can only have 4 of it in deck, and when placed, you discard a card from your hand, and units cannot be hit till the end of the battle. So, PG, it's really helpful, and it's a draw trigger, and this deck needs draws. Yet, every time I play this deck in area, for some reason I soul charge them. Why? I don't know. It just happens way too often for it to be a coincidence. Next up, 4 copies of Cyber Tiger and 4 copies of Mercury of Gravitas. So basically, both criticals, this deck runs 8 crits, and that's pretty much how I like it, because you like to crit stack your opponent. Next up is 4 heals, Witch of Big Pot Laurier. This could be any heal you want. I just chose this one because it's the cheaper one and I just want it. Next up, 2 copies of Battle Maiden. Oh, oops, sorry, wrong name. I forgot it didn't save. Witch of Pure White Clary. So, AK base, auto rearguard circle. When its attack or the attack it boosted hits, you may soul charge 3. So, this is here at 2 for a very certain reason. For a Divine Gauge to go off, if you don't know, unlike equip gauges that come from the top of the deck, Divine Gauges come from the soul. And if the deck doesn't have too much of a soul problem, in fact it doesn't have a soul problem at all, but in like the off chances you see none of your main cards that can soul charge, such as Norn, Yggdrasil, the thing that searches for Norn, or the main grade 1 ride target, if you have to rely on this, it's not the end of the world. It's just, from my experience, not suggested, and the only reason why I say this is because the one time that I had to rely on it, I soul charged 3 triggers, and only one of them was intentional because I had stacked one at the top of the deck forgetting that this would have to hit for this code to go off, and I'm an idiot for forgetting that. Point is, it's not the worst thing to rely on, but it's not the best thing to rely on either. 2 copies, only here if you need it though. Next up, 3 copies of Swift Wonder of the Clear Skies, Achilles. So AK base, act, rearguard circle, put this unit to soul, and 3 of your units get plus 3k. So, you know, 3 of your units get plus 3k. So, really helpful. It can push your units to hit, it can push your grade 2s to hit like force numbers on grade 3. So, if you want to say you're grade locked and you want to grade 2 rush your opponent while they're at grade 3, you can. They'll probably guard it easily, but it's still a possibility. And it's just really helpful. Also, it sends itself to soul, the main reason why it's here. And it looks cool, so 3 copies. And speaking of the grade 1 ride target, 4 copies of Astray of the Full Heavens. Wait, I feel like I skipped a card. No, I did not. Okay, anyways, Astray of the Full Heavens. So 7k base, 10k shield, auto Vanguard rearguard. When placed, draw a card and put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. If it's on a Vanguard, then soul charge 2. So you want to see this for your main grade 1 ride, because the soul charge 2 gives you a lot of setup for later, and it just gives you Divine Gauge options later rather than having to soul charge during the match, like mid-game. You can just do it right then at the start, and then you won't have to be too much pressure, and that's what I like about her. And guaranteed you get a free draw, and then you get to possibly send a trigger back. And then also, auto rearguard circle at the end of the battle that it boosted, Soul Blast 2, return this unit to their hand. I don't like using that skill. That's just a me personal thing. I have nothing against the skill. It's a really good skill. I greatly concur with that. It's an amazing skill, and I have no problems against it. It's just that I like to have excess amounts of soul just in case something were to go wrong during the game, like such as, oh, I need more gauge for so-and-so, or next turn they're going to nuke this thing, so now I need to set up gauge for it, so I need to keep my soul. That's what I like to do, so I don't like using the Soul Blast cost for it unless I have to. There's no problem with it at all. Like, I greatly think that if it wasn't for that, I would actually use the skill more often, but I like having a safety net, and this kind of screws over my safety net. So, you use it how you like to. I just like to have a safety net, and I don't want to get fucked over by one card just getting targeted. Next up, we got 4 copies of the main, well, not main grade 1, but actually, yeah, main grade 1 to have on rearguard, Bowstring of Heaven and Earth, Artemis. AK base, auto rearguard circle. When it attacks or boosts, you may put a card from your soul face down as a divine gauge for this unit. Finally, a divine gauge card. And then act rearguard circle, counterblast 1 and discard one of this unit's divine gauges, and choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the same column as this unit and retire it. I have never used that skill in my life. I have used the first one, because it can spam divine gauges, and that's exactly what you want to do in this deck. But I have never used the second skill because, 1, even though this deck does not have a counterblast problem, it really doesn't. It kind of has one now, but not too big of one. But I've never used that skill because discarding a divine gauge when there's only 1 on it is so stupid that it wouldn't come into hand. Now, like, if it had 2 on it, or more than 2, yeah, I'll use it, but it only sacks a thing in the same column, and honestly, no one really would put something in the same column as this unless you just code 3 to the back row, then they have no choice but to do so. But in that case, unless it has 2 on it, it's not going to do anything for me besides the first skill. But it's still a good card, so 4 copies. It also involves gauges, so fair enough. Next up, 4 copies of the Grade 2 Regalia Fate Norn, the new one. So 10k base, 5k shield, I almost read that as 18. Act Vanguard or Rearguard once per turn, counterblast 1 and draw a card, and then choose one of your rearguards. If you do, you may put a soul from face down as a divine gauge for that unit, and if you put a card, you soul charge 2. So you get a guaranteed draw, you pick something, it gets a divine gauge, and you soul charge 2. Really nice for setup, can be used on Vanguard or Rearguard for that, and it just gets you a free soul charge and a free draw. Honestly, there have been times where I've top decked from this because of it, and where my drive checks have been stuff that I need, and it gives you setup for like the next turn where you decide to go into either Yggdrasil, Yggdrasil. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. I don't know how to pronounce it, or Artemis. Either way, gives you setup for both. And then it has another skill. Auto rearguard circle once per turn. At the end of the battle that it boosted a unit with Regalia in its card name, discard a card from your hand, and one of your units get one of this unit's divine gauges, and stay in the boosted unit, and it gets plus 10k and loses a draft check on the turn. So yes, you could restand the Vanguard if the Vanguard is either another Norn, or it is the Cosmic Regalia thing I can't pronounce the name of. But, once more, same thing as the other two, I don't like using this. Partially because of the divine gauge thing, but also, I never ride the Cosmic Regalia. I've only ridden it once, and that's because I had no other choice. It was either that, or be grade locked against a deck that can kill me very easily, and I'd rather be on that thing than actually be grade locked against that deck. So, it basically came down to that, and I've yet to use that restand skill because it's not that I don't think it's worth it or anything. I do actually think it's worth it. But, I have yet to use it when it's on the Vanguard Circle. But, I like to use Artemis on Van, because Artemis skill only activates on Vanguard Circle, while Cosmic Regalia activates both on Rearguard and Vanguard Circle. So yeah, I'll call Norn behind the Rearguard Cosmic Regalia, and I'll use it to restand that, but I won't use it on the Vanguard Circle unless, like I said, it's my only choice, and I don't really have options. But otherwise, that's normally how I play it, and it might be wrong, but that's normally how I like to play it, because it gives more access to skills, I guess. So 4 copies. Still a good card, though. Next up, we've got 4 copies of Prometheus of Dancing Lights. So, 10k base, 5k shield, auto Vanguard or Rearguard. When placed, look at top 2, put one from on the soul, and then put the other at the top. So, deck stacking and get you an extra soul. Really nice, and you can combo this with Norn by going, let's say you got a Norn in hand, and you got a Prometheus, and it's your grade 2 turn. You could go, ride Prometheus, look at top 2, oh, look at that, there's a trigger at the top, and then there's like this normal unit, but I don't really want that normal unit in hand. So what you could do, and since you're going to draw the crit anyways, you could put the crit on top, shove the normal unit to soul, call Norn, use her skill to draw a card, get itself a divine gauge, and then you soul charge 2. Or you could just not use Norn and then attack your opponent for an extra critical. Either way, you get something out of it. So really nice. And then auto Rearguard Circle, when it attacks, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 1, grade 3 or greater, this and one of your Vanguards get plus 5k to end of turn. So 15k attacker and can give 5k to the Vanguard, so it becomes an 18k base. So really nice. 4 copies, and it can be used during that grade 2 rush turn I talked about earlier, where if you're grade locked in, your opponent's at grade 3. So really nice. Next up, 4 copies of Twilight Hunter Artemis, the original one, or like one of the very first cards that involve divine gauges. So auto Rearguard Circle, once attack hits, you may put a card from your soul as a face down divine gauge for this unit. I love that skill because, as you know, I like pressuring my opponent into guarding whether they want to or not. Oh, you're at 4 damage, you can afford to take this? Do you want to give me another divine gauge? Or do you want to guard this? Or you're at 0 damage and you just want to take it because of counterblast. Do you want to give me a divine gauge to abuse next turn that you can't stop me from using? Or do you want to block it? Either way, I get a benefit out of it and it's fun for me. And then the other skill, Continuous Rearguard Circle. It gets plus 10k power for each divine gauge on this unit. And that can stack, and it's during both players' turns. So like say you have 2 divine gauges on, it's plus 30k, it's plus 20, so it's a 30k base. I remember that I grade 2 rushed my opponent one time with 2 of these, and they took both of them. They went to 3 damage because they blocked the Vanguard, and I got a critical trigger and I put it on one of them. But they both were at 30k base during both mine and their turn. They could not ram into it because they didn't have the power to. Wow, so those were just big shields that they couldn't stop. Then during my next turn, they were even bigger shields. I mean, not bigger shields. They were even bigger swingers, hitters, whatever they're called. Bigger beat sticks. And they just keep pushing and pushing for more power. And that's what I like about it. Because if it hits, I get a divine gauge, and it gets plus 10k power permanently. While if they do guard it, they have to throw down cards and they don't get counterblast. So either way, I either get to damage starve them and make them waste cards so that I don't get benefits, or they take damage, I get a divine gauge, and later on I get the plus off it. So either way, I'm getting some form of plus. It just depends on what plus my opponent wants me to have. Either way, nice card, 4 copies. And considering the card I spoke about so much, 4 copies of Cosmic Regalia, CEO Yggdrasil, or Yggdrasil, whatever it's called. 13k base, 4 skip. I like its artwork. Continuous Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle. The reason why I never ride it, all of your Rearguard Circles with Divine Gauge get boost. Then if it's on the Vanguard and it's your opponent's turn, those Rearguards cannot be affected by any of your opponent's cards. So I never ride it because of the boost. The only other time I would write, like I said, I only wrote this once. That's because I had no choice because it was the only grade 3 in my hand, and I'd rather be on that grade 3 than be grade locked in a deck that could kill me. But it's still useful because it prevents your opponent from touching those rear guards if they have a divine gauge and if it's on Van. It's like, say for example, you're playing against Kagero. They can't touch them. Or they're playing Narukami. They can't touch them. Simple as that. If I'm playing against Kagero or Narukami, yes, I'll ride this. I will ride it to protect my units so that they can't get rid of my giant beat stick known as Twilight Hunter Artemis. Yes, I will actually ride it. And it also gives the boost, but that's the main reason why I don't ride it. But otherwise, it's going to be on rear. And then the other skill, active Vanguard or Rearguard, once per turn, Counterblast 1, search your deck for up to 1 Regalia Fate Norn, call it your Rearguard Circle, shuffle your deck, choose up to 2 of your Rearguards, and put up to 1 card from your soul as a divine gauge for each of those units. So, you get a free Norn, and 2 units get divine gauges. That's simple. So you could go ride Yggdrasil or Yggdrasil. Say you have 2 Twilight Hunters in the front row. You do band skill, counter blast, and both those Twilight Hunters have a divine gauge. You call Norn from deck. One of the Twilight Hunters and the Norn get a divine gauge. Then skill of the Norn, counter blast, draw, pick the other Twilight Hunter that didn't get a gauge from CEO. It gets a gauge. You soul charge 2. Now both of your Twilight Hunters get plus 20, and that Norn back there has boost. So pretty simple and pretty good card. So 4 copies, and it can just do it to itself too if you call it to rear and you put a divine gauge on it. And the last grade 3, the one I mainly ride because it's a Vanguard restricted skill. Battle deity of the night, Artemis, 13k base, continuous Vanguard circle. All of your units with divine gauge cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects, get plus 5k power, and trigger effects this unit gets. So, right, I remember why the other reason why I don't ride CEO, because this thing basically does the same thing. So, yeah. So either way, your opponent can't touch them by any means. They can't bind them, they can't retire them, they can't bounce them, if I'm correct. Yeah, so either way, actually I need to check something. What does it say? It can't be killed? Oh no, there's not effective. So, okay, so basically, CEO is used for stuff like Mega Colony, where they minus power or prevent them from standing. Nope, just minus power. Artemis, they can't do shit to them. Then that's why I use Artemis more, because it's Artemis. But the other reason I use it more is because the units with divine gauges get plus 5k, and they get the trigger effects that this unit gets. So, say you get a critical trigger, put it on the van. Everything that has a divine gauge is getting that critical trigger. I have no joke, on my first grade 3 turn, because I used all of my counterblast, spammed out a whole field where everything had a divine gauge, twin drived into a crit, and then gave it to the van. Everything got plus 10k in a crit. So each column, and CEO was in the back row by the way, so everything had boost too. And so every column got plus 20 and an extra crit on it. Second check, heal trigger. Okay, I had to heal, but still, that two big columns on the side plus this, just massive numbers, and that's what I love about it. And it's a constant ability too. So like the 5k is a permanent thing. So those Twilights I was talking about before, they were 35k bases during both turns, and that's just fun. So your opponent can't really hit over them. They're like rear guard versions of Gizeh, except minus the thing that made Gizeh broken about the automatic 6 damage thing that no one can stop. That I have actually almost survived multiple times, yet I still keep getting dick moved by the final card not being a heal. And then the other skill, auto rearguard circle. When placed, you may put a card from your soul face down as a divine gauge for this unit. So it has an on-place ability, and it's only 1 gauge. It's not that great, and that's why I choose not to call it. But considering that CEO can constantly get it gauges, and so can Norn, it's fine if it only gets 1. Plus, it only needs 1 anyways for Artemis to go off. So how I play, ride Artemis, call CEO to back row or front row, then call Norn behind CEO. Then call CEO, use CEO skill, search for Norn, and then have Twilight Hunters in another column. Then use the skill to give gauges to both Twilights. Then use skill of Norn to counterblast, give itself a gauge, and then soul charge 2 and draw. Call something else that can possibly get a gauge. Shove it on one of the others. Twilights. Just stack power, make it your opponent can't do crap, and just let them die. Either way, amazing deck. And onto the gifts. So Force 1, this one is, you can use it. There's no problem with using it because you can get power stacking out of it. But I don't like to. Yeah, it can stack and it can give you a constant 10k during your turn. But Force 2, despite the fact it can't stack, this deck can get plenty of power on its own, and just putting Force 2 on the rear guard makes it annoying to deal with. Like, no matter what, your opponent can't touch your shit. So, if you're at grade 3, your opponent can't do crap to your rear guards, end of story. The most they can do is, depending on what grade 3 you're on, they could possibly spark Hercules it if I'm correct, but that's the worst they can do. And I honestly believe that Force 2 can just rush your opponent down better considering the amount of power you can get, so might as well use Force 2. I normally go Vanguard, then the column with the Twilight Hunters, and then the other column. Either way, and then finally Quick Shield, so 5k shield, basically, and normally used for discard fodder. Hint hint, that's what you'll discard for Twilight Hunter Artemis if you do actually end up using her skill to kill something in the same column. Well, that was the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. If you ever want to test out this deck yourself, or play against me for whatever reason, you can meet me in Cardfight area and look for someone named Kariba level 8. Also, tell me that you're here to fight me, otherwise I will actually ignore your fight request, because I normally only play certain people, so unless you tell me that you're coming, I most likely will ignore it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and to the Patreon. See you on the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguard.